What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is Brooklyn rapper, label head, and ghostwriter Skyzoo. We spoke about House Party, his fascination with John Singleton and Spike Lee, his time as a rap consultant on the 2014 film Patti Cakes, concept albums, his recent vocal cord surgery, cultural appropriation, the state of modern rap media, and the creative process behind his latest album, All the Brilliant Things, out now via Mello Music Group. Come fuck with us. What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to Real Notes. I think this is number 14. Yeah, no. This is definitely number 14. I always get the numbers fucked up. My name is Dylan Green, CineMasai. Got names. Those are two of them. Every guest on this show is incredibly special, but we have a really fucking awesome, amazing guest on today. This guy is he's been through it all, man. He's a rapper, he's label head with First Generation Rich, he's a producer, he's a ghostwriter, native son of Brooklyn, fan of Penny One Air Maxes and chicken wings with extra duck sauce. You got Skyzoo in the place to be.
what a setup, man. What a setup. Absolutely, man. I've been rocking Penny Ones and eating chicken wings with extra duck sauce since I was a little kid, and I still rock Penny Ones and eat wings with extra duck sauce. So ain't much change, you know what I mean?
See, that's the beautiful thing about growing up, because, you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
The more they stay the same, yep, absolutely.
Yo, Sky, bro, thank you so much for coming on, man. On my shit, I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, man, and taking the time. I appreciate it all.
No, of course. Yeah. And we're gonna touch on a lot of things here, particularly All the Brilliant Things, which will be out by the time this episode gets released. It's not out right now, but I've heard it. It's dope. It's fire. So yeah, of course. Thank you for the music. So when I do this podcast, the first question I usually ask everybody is what their first movie experience is they can remember. But I know that you've talked a lot about seeing Boys in the Hood with your father for the first time as a kid in the theater. So unless you can think of anything earlier than that, if you wouldn't mind walking us through what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, kid stuff, like, you know, I think my parents take me to see Ninja Turtles like 8 times, you know what I mean, as a kid. So, you know, the first Ninja Turtle movie, which was bananas, it was great. That and, you know, going to see Malcolm X in the theaters, but that was after Boys in the Hood. I remember wanting to see House Party. I think when House Party came out, I was like 7 or 8, and I remember wanting to see House Party, and my parents being like, nah. You know what I mean? And me being like, yo, come on, I want to see it, because I was a Kid and Play fan. I'm a little kid and all that.
Right.
And my parents being like, nah. And I remember everybody was talking about going, you know, everybody that was in their mid to late 20s, like my parents was talking about House Party. And I remember just hearing all that and that energy and wanting to go, and them being like, no way, like this movie's going to be raw. You know what I mean? So now I know the movie by heart. You know what I mean? I was like 7 years old at the time.
That's so crazy, because the first time I saw it, I saw it on a school field trip. I forget where we were going, but they just like threw it on the bus.
That's crazy.
We must have been in like 7th or 8th grade, and they just threw that on.
That's
and we
crazy. That's a pretty raw movie.
That movie's wild, bro.
Yeah, there's a lot of language in that movie.
Yeah, but nah, like our teachers trusted us, and they were just like, nah, let's just show them this Kid and Play movie with Robin Harris, and just they got it. It's cool.
Absolutely.
That was it. But yeah, like, you know, like, of course, like, as most of us are, we're like growing up watching things and just kind of like taking in all this culture that, like, of course you were immersed in growing up in Brooklyn. But talk to me about seeing Boys in the Hood with your father for the first time, and how that experience kind of shaped you.
Yeah, it was dope, because obviously it's an amazing movie, classic. You know, I hate the term hood movies. When we say, yo, that's a hood movie, or the hood movie, so it's like a subgenre. I hate the hood movie tag, but if you're gonna tag something, that it is the king of the hood movies. It is the best one. It is the most artistic, it's the most cinematic. It's the one that, if these other folks, you know, for lack of a better term, was gonna let one slip in, it's that one. You know, that's the one that got a nominee, you know, Oscar nominee and all that. Like, it's that one, you know, and it deserves every accolade it's ever gotten. You know, John Singleton was an utter genius with that. Rest in peace to him. And when I saw that movie, man, I was 9, 10 years old. That was 10, something like that. And I remember going with my pops, and we left the theater, and, you know, he had told me, you know, he wanted me to write a report about it. But before he even said that part, I remember when we walked out and he asked me, he was like, so what did you get from the movie? Like, what was your favorite part of the movie? Or, you know, what do you remember the most? And I was 10 years old. So I was like, the scene when they was in the classroom and Trey was whipping son out. You know what I mean? Like, that was my favorite part of the movie because I was 10, you know what I mean? So, and I remember my pops being mad at me, and I'm a little kid, you know what I'm saying? But I remember him being mad, like, that's all you got from that movie? That's what you got from that movie? And I was like, yeah, like, because that was the part. I was a kid. So seeing a 10-year-old in the classroom whip a kid out, I felt like I was in that class with them, you know? So, but at the same time, the movie was my life because I would go to my pop's house on the weekends. That was my life. And then right after that, it switched where I would be at my pop's house and go to my mother's house on the weekend, which, if you know the record Milestones, I did a song on there called Turning 10, which I used that whole analogy, and that stuff really happened in my life. So seeing the movie, I was going through the same thing. You know, I was literally going through the first 15, 20 minutes of that movie was my real life at that time, you know, and I was the same age as him. So it hit crazy. But at the same time, I was a kid. So the part that stood out to me was when Trey was whipping son out in the class, you know, with the teacher's thing. That was the part for me that was great. You know what I mean? The rest of it was over my head as a little kid. And I was like, okay, but that was my part. And my pops was mad. He was like, that's what you got from that movie? That's all you got from that? All right, when we go home, I want you to write a report about the movie, you know? So, but it was worth it, man. I cherish those moments.
Yeah, I get that. Cause that opening scene is really it's really something. Cause like you're talking about the scene where they're arguing and then one of them calls the other, I'm an African booty scratcher, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and then they get at it and one of them's got the rat tail on the back of their head. Yeah. So like, it's like, cause like whenever I think about Boys in the Hood, it's like that scene, it's the swap meet with where Ice Cube pulls out the gun when the when the other bros come
Sundays
through.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, and just like, cause like I rewatched it with my girlfriend. Must have been like maybe like somewhere between like 3 and 6 months ago. That's a huge range, but that's all I can remember. Like, and like taking all of that in, just like Singleton was so amazing at ringing. He just like got everyday life, like forget hood life. Like he just got how people worked, you know, and like you you know people like that's in every one of his movies.
100%. Like, he's the West Coast Spike Lee, straight up and down. He's the West Coast Spike Lee. And I think he aspired to that. You know, he was younger than Spike. He grew up a Spike fan. I think he aspired for that, and he got it. He was the West Coast Spike Lee, without a doubt.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like especially as he went on, you know, like Poetic Justice and just like I could I could sit here and list names. I'm not even gonna do that. He just really had it like that. And it was just a really really beautiful movie. I just talked to somebody else pretty recently on this podcast, actually kind of comparing that to why am I forgetting, Menace to Society, because they kind of came out around the same time. And like at this point in my life, having seen both and really like kind of taking them in, I the opening scene I always come back to is O-Dog in the fucking bodega. Like it's like there's just something so like Boys in the Hood is a movie that's very like, it's super stark and very just like matter of fact, but I think like Menace to Society is just even more, it's just even more intense and kind of like bleak, honestly. Like they're both pretty bleak, but there's just something so like, you mentioned the word raw earlier. Like to me, like Menace to Society is like, that's like raw.
Yeah,
like,
Menace is way wilder than Boys in the Hood. You know, I remember, and Boys in the Hood is wild. You know, Singleton didn't pull no punches on it. Like he let it roll. You know what I mean? He let it roll. And but I remember when Menace came out, which was like 2 years later, the tagline for Menace was, "This is the streets. This is what's real." And even as a little kid, I felt like that was a little jab at Boys in the Hood, because Boys in the Hood was raw and it was LA. But you know, you heard even when Eazy-E came out at the time, it was like, yo, that's an after school special. You know, because it was about Black fatherhood and a good kid caught up in the hood and all that type of stuff. So people from the hood had never seen that type of movie. If there was a movie reflecting what was going on in the hood, it just showed the hood. It didn't show a Black father saying, I want my son out of this. It didn't show all those different sides and those elements. And a kid getting in the car to go get revenge for his best friend getting killed, and then getting out the car and being like, yo, let me out. I'm not built for this. Like, those types of movies that represented these neighborhoods didn't show that at the time. They just showed getting to it. Like any other movie, he would have gotten in the car and they would have got to it. Trey would have gotten in the car, he would have stayed, and they would have let off, and he would have been there when all that work happened. But Singleton had it, and you know, it was based on Singleton's real life, and he was Trey. So you know, he got out the car, you know, and that's what made people be like, oh, that's an after school special. As great and historic as it was, and obviously that's bullshit to call it after school special, but at the time people were so ignorant to it and didn't really get it. Menace came back, and their rebuttal was, nah, we giving it to you raw. This is what would happen in the hood. This is what would happen in the street. This is the way it really, really goes down. There is no happy ending. There is no whatever. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of the back and forth with it. But they're both classics. I know Menace to Society by heart. I literally know every word of that movie by heart. I know Boys in the Hood by heart. You know, like sometimes when I speak, I use movie references, and I'll just say something from a movie mid-conversation. People will be like, what? And then they'll get it and be like, yo, shut up, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's how I talk sometimes, you know, and those are two movies that I pull a lot of dialogue from, just being silly, you know, like I know both of those movies by heart. They're both classics. Boys in the Hood obviously has the deeper meaning, but, you know, Menace hit home runs all through it.
Right. Yeah. And it's really interesting that you bring all that up, because I know I was reading some article fairly recently about when Singleton and Paramount were marketing the movie, like they cut a trailer and they cut only the parts that showed like the shooting and the wild shit. Right. And Singleton and the producers had to be like, this is not what this movie's about. Like, y'all are selling the wrong movie. And they were like, oh, we want to make it more appealing. And they were like, nah, like this is not the movie. Like they kind of wanted it to be like a rebuttal to all of that, or if not a rebuttal, like a commentary, or at least like some sort of thoughtful critique on it. Right. So I know they really didn't appreciate the Paramount executives being like, yeah, it's just like, just that, you know. So
did they get their way, or did Paramount win?
I think Paramount won. Ultimately,
I'm trying to remember what the trailer looked like, and I mean that was 30-something years ago since I've watched the trailer. I watched the actual movie all the time, but seeing the trailer was a very long time ago, so I don't remember how raw the trailer was or not. Now I'm curious. When we get off, I'm probably gonna watch the trailer.
Yeah, I'm gonna look for it too, because I haven't seen it since I read the piece. But like, because they marketed it, and then it came out, and people saw it, and of course, like the assumption that a lot of people had was that they were gonna, like, it was kind of like with Do the Right Thing. People thought there were gonna be riots in the streets over the movie, and obviously there or like there might have been, but it wasn't like. It wasn't like didn't. That, yeah, exactly. So, you know, like you kind of have, so like Boys in the Hood in particular is a very important movie, not just to like the culture at large, but to you specifically as both a man and a rapper. So like, would it be fair to say that that's the movie that made you fall in love with movies, or did you have another specific moment that kind of did that?
I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe that. I mean, everything before that, I was really young. You know, like that movie came out, I was like 9. That was 91. 91, I was 9. You know what I mean? So, you know, anything before that was Ninja Turtles, and, you know, was the Lion King out? No, Lion King wasn't out. Just all that type of stuff, though. You know, just being a kid, you know. I always loved Do the Right Thing, but again, I caught that later in life. You know, I was maybe 8 when that came out, 7 or 8, you know, so that doesn't count. And that's my favorite movies of all time are Do the Right Thing, Goodfellas, and Mo Better Blues. Like, it's a 3-way tie. Those are my favorite movies ever. Movies where no matter when they come on TV randomly, no matter what you're in the middle of, you could just sit there and watch them. Yep. No matter how many times. They could do a marathon of like every day on VH1, we're going to show Goodfellas, or we're going to show Mo Better Blues once a day. I'll watch it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's how it's your favorite. Like, so those 3 are my favorite movies of all time. Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, and Goodfellas.
See, that's crazy, because like I feel like Mo Better Blues is appreciated, but people don't really talk about it the way they like I don't want to call it underrated, but it's like it never comes up in top 3s, you know, like it's never at that level of like Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X, and
he's done so much stuff, you know what I mean? He's done so much groundbreaking stuff, but now Mo Better is, man, I absolutely love Mo Better. That's top 3 favorite, and it's number 1. It's not like 1, 2, 3, like they're tied. You know what I mean? Like, my favorites, and that doesn't mean best. You know what I mean? Like, Penny Hardaway is my favorite basketball player ever, but Michael Jordan's the greatest, you know what I mean? And I love Mike as well. So, you know, but those three are my favorites ever, you know, those three movies. I can watch all three of them any time of day, 7 days a week, not a problem. Won't get tired of it.
Right. Yeah. Like that foundation is really important to have as like a consumer and just like as a person, because like these things, you know, like you were saying with Boys in the Hood, like it's like reflective of your life, and like this stuff, and like those three movies are all like they're all so personal. Like all three, like even Goodfellas to an extent is like a fairly personal movie. You know,
and I mean, obviously not for me because I can't relate to it on that level, you know, because I'm not Italian and I didn't grow up in Bensonhurst and all that stuff. But it's such an amazingly well put together movie, and it's so entertaining and so real and raw, and just the art of it, the way it was written, the cinematics, the way it's shot, the fact that it's 3 hours but doesn't feel like it. It's a phenomenal movie, man. Like Goodfellas, but everybody feels that way. Nobody doesn't like Goodfellas. Everybody's like, nah, Goodfellas is great. Yeah, I mean, you can take from projects who's never been around Italians and be like, nah, Goodfellas is it, bro. Like everybody loves Goodfellas. You know what I mean? Like Goodfellas is amazing.
Now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever met anybody who doesn't like Goodfellas either. It's just one of those ones. Like even if you're not a fan of Scorsese's other stuff, like it's like for me, like Goodfellas, The Departed, and like maybe Taxi Driver. Like those are three that everybody's like, okay, like I'll give you those. Like cool, those are good.
yeah.
Yeah. So of course you're also a pretty big Spike Lee fan, and of course you made the song "Spike Lee Was My Hero" from A Dream Deferred. So kind of like talk to me about your relationship with Spike's movies and kind of how they spoke to you growing up and as you got older.
The thing about Spike stuff, which is, you know, one of the main reasons why I always looked at, you know, him as a hero, you know, and just being my favorite director ever, and one of my favorite representatives in Black culture, and you know, upholding something for Black folk. He always put it all on the screen. What I loved about him, even as a kid, was every movie I saw my neighborhood. You know, I saw my neighborhood in every movie he did, from Do the Right Thing to Mo Better, you know, being in Brooklyn, to, you know, obviously Crooklyn was like, I know the block they shot Crooklyn on. You know, it's a fish spot around the corner that's still jumping. Like I know the neighborhood. You know what I mean? So like, you know, every movie he put the neighborhood on. You know, he put Brooklyn on. And the same thing with Singleton. That's why I say he's the West Coast. Everything Singleton did was LA except for Four Brothers. That was Detroit. But everything else, if I remember, was LA. You know, and you know, with Spike, everything was Brooklyn and still is, you know, and I love that. And it's the way he represents us. And again, doesn't hold no punches. Like I said earlier with Singleton, holds no punches, goes for it, says what needs to be said, does what needs to be done, and really creates these moments, even visually and artistically. Like obviously the dolly with the traveling dolly, like where it rides with you, but he's just amazing. He's just amazing. You know what I mean? Like there's so much you can say. It's hard to say it all. Like he really is that guy, man. He really is that guy.
Yeah, nah, definitely. Like there's like, I won't lie, there's a handful of his movies, especially like around like the 2010s, that I'm not a fan of, that I just kind of didn't really hit for me. But like that's one thing I agree with you 1,000%. Like one thing I always loved about Spike is that like he has a very specific style and a specific voice, and he puts it all out there. Like I forget who said it, but there's like someone I heard say that like he makes movies like he's never going to be able to make another movie again. And he has to get every single idea on the screen. Like you look at something like Bamboozled, like that's like he's like, damn, like movies are going to become illegal tomorrow. I got to get this movie done. Like he there's just so much.
So great. Bamboozled's one that doesn't get talked about in his catalog. Even with Mo Better. Like I think people talk about Mo Better more than Bamboozled. Like Bamboozled kind of gets forgotten about, but man, Bamboozled is so strong, man. Like it's so strong, man. Like he got it. He's had it figured out for like 40 years now. He know what he's doing.
Like I had to take a break watching Bamboozled. Like the first time I I literally split it in half. I watched it with my sister, and she was like only half paying attention at the time. And they were just like, you good? Like they just saw me over there just like sitting in the corner, like just like I was just drowsy, and they were like, you good? I was like, yeah, I need to take a break for a second. Yeah, it's just so intense, but like, and it's interesting because you also mentioned, like, of course, like with Spike, there's the New York and Brooklyn connection. Even when his movies don't take place in New York, like you could even look at something as recently as like The Five Bloods, which doesn't take place in the States, period.
Right.
So like there's just such a New York flair to everything he does, and like The Five Bloods in particular was something like that was the first time in a long time that I had really been like, wow, like. Like it really reminded me of everything I loved about Spike when I first saw like Do the Right Thing and Jungle Fever and Bamboozled. I was like, wow, this is Spike right here.
Yeah.
Like,
nah, he got a style that's all his own. He's inspired everyone, whether they realize it or not, whether they admit it or not. It's a real thing with him.
Yeah. Nah, that's facts. And like, so talk to me about making Spike Lee Was My Hero and like getting him to be in the video and just like where the whole idea of the song came from, because that's like that concept is really tight.
Yeah, when I heard the beat, my man Tall Black Guy did the beat. When I heard the
Shout out to Tall Black Guy, he's the best.
Yeah, he's nuts, man. He's really, really talented. When I heard the beat, it felt like superhero music. It felt like a theme song. So I didn't have an idea to make a song about Spike Lee or about my hero. It wasn't like that. I just heard the beat and then da, 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 da. I was like, yo, this should feel like a superhero. Like it feels like flying in the sky with a cape on. Like it feels like theme music for a hero. And then I said, well, who's my superhero? And of course, you know, my pops, but I didn't want to make a record about my pops on that type of beat because that type of beat spoke a certain thing, and that would have been a little weird. Just from an artistic standpoint, it would have been a little weird talking about my dad on that type of beat. You're gonna make a record about your parents, your dad, your family. You want something that has it's a little more like kind of on the emotional side, and you know, just a different way to do it. You take a record like anything I did on Milestones, like those beats make sense for what I'm talking about. So making a record about my pops on that beat wouldn't make any sense, and I don't think people would have got the flair of superhero if I talked about my dad. It would have just been like, oh, he made a record about his dad. But superheroes are normally people who you can't see and touch and have relationships with and you know, have access to like that, you know? So people will get it if it's somebody of that ilk, not the guy who raised you and who you grew up with. So there's a lot of reasons why I said, well, who's my superhero outside of my pops or whatever? And I was like, Spike Lee. Right away, Spike Lee. And then in my head, I just went, Spike Lee was my hero. Spike Lee was my hero. And I was like, oh man. And then the using the word was, and the science behind that was, you know, growing up through all these different things and in these different worlds and what was going on. How did I get through it? Well, here's a part of it. This man was my hero. And that's why this thing went the way it did. That's why I write the way I write. That's why. So, because some people could be like, yo, why do you say is? Did something happen where he's not your hero no more? Like, no, he absolutely is part of my hero, you know, section. But I say was because I'm talking about, yo, this is how I grew up and what was happening. And this thing could have went bad if this guy wasn't my hero, but he was my hero. So that's why I grew up the way I did and why I write the way I write and create the way I create. So that was why that went that way. And I did the record and, you know, it was just the two verses and all that. I did the record and I was with Kweli. Kweli hit me and he was like, yo, I'm working on this joint. You know, I'm working on this project. You know, if you come to the lab, you know, do a verse. I was like, yeah, for sure. So he featured me on this project he was doing. I think it was a mixtape. And I go to the lab and do the joint. You know, he plays the beat. I write a verse on the spot, spit the verse, boom, everything is good. And afterwards, he was like, yo, you know, what you been up to? Like, what's going on? And I said, I'm working on a new album, whatever. He was like, yo, you got some? What you let me hear it? And I put the flash drive in and I played like 2 records or whatever. And by the 3rd record, it was that one. And he was like, yo, I don't know if you wanted me on something, but if you do, let me get on this one. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. Like I didn't have any intentions of putting anyone on that record because who else would say Spike is their hero? Like what other rappers, you know what I mean, would be like, yeah, Spike's my hero. You know what I mean? So it didn't, in my mind, I wasn't going to ask nobody to get on the record because it wouldn't have really made sense, you know? So, but with Qua, it made sense. He went to, you know, Tech, which is across the street from Spike's office. Like, you know what I mean? Like he went to, you know, Brooklyn Tech High School and, you know, he grew up in that era. He's older than me. So he really was in the mix of it. If I was a little kid, 7, 8 years old when Do the Right Thing came out, he might've been 14, 15. So he really saw it and really understood it. You know what I mean? So, you know, it made a ton of sense. He's from Brooklyn, you know, his intelligence and where he's at and what he does, it made all kind of sense. And then he was like, yo, if you want me on something, I'm definitely down to get on this one. And I was like, done deal. And I left the record with him, and maybe a week later he sent it back to me, and then we did the video. So what happened with that, we did the record, album comes out. So man, like 2 or 3 days after the album comes out, I get a tweet from Spike. And it's just like, yo, loving this new Skyzoo record, you know, honored to be your hero, brother, something like that, whatever, I'm paraphrasing. And I was like, yo, like I'm reading this thing and I'm like, yo, this is crazy, because I had never met Spike. I'm like, yo, 2 minutes later, he tweets again and he's quoting lyrics from the song. Sheesh. So I'm like, oh, this is turning into something. Like he's listening to it and he's excited. So I'm like, yo, this is crazy. I write back, yo, thank you so much, brother, whatever. So a friend of mine, my man Fuse Green, he does a lot of artwork for Spike, a lot of the movie posters and logos and things like that. He's an amazing artist, and he is like one of Spike's in-house graphic art and designer dudes. So I knew that he worked with Spike, but I never tried to use that. I didn't say, yo, can you get this to Spike? Like it wasn't that type of thing. But once Spike hit me, I hit Fuse like, yo, look who just hit me, bro. I might need you to make that connection. He was like, yeah, for sure, man, whatever. So he put me in touch with my man Jason, who's been with Spike forever. Jason is like Spike's right-hand man, and he's been with Spike for the longest. And Jason's another Brooklyn guy, mega cool. That's my bro. I got with Jason, and then that was it. It just went from there. So the way Spike heard it, Spike's son was listening to the record. So I didn't know, you know, Jackson was a fan like that. So I'm like, yo, that's amazing. And he's listening to the record, and he goes in his father's room and goes, yo, Dad, come here. I want you to hear something. And that was it. Spike heard it and was like, yo, what's that? Like, you know, and that was the way it went down. So then Jason spoke to Spike, and then he was like, yeah, bring Scott to the office, you know, let's hook it up. And I went to the office and met him and all that. And then he was like, yo, so we shooting the video, right? And I was like, okay. Like, I wasn't even thinking about it. You know what I mean? I just was good with him dapping me on it. Like, yo, it's fire. You know what I mean? I appreciate it, you know, but he literally said, so we shooting the video, right? And I was like, yeah, we shooting the video. Yeah, whatever you want to do, baby, let's do it. You know, so we put it together. And my man Alex G, shout out to my man Alex G, rest in peace, another Jersey guy. He actually passed away a few years ago in a big Oakland fire that was all over the news and stuff. So it was a very, very close friend of mine. Yeah, and he did that video. He did a bunch of videos for me, but he did that video. And man, it was a highlight. It's crazy, like when he passed and the news was talking about the Oakland fire, because it was such a big deal. It was like nationwide story, like, you know, CNN and all that. And they were talking about him. They were using the video and all the clips, and they were talking about how he worked with Spike Lee and all that stuff. And that was our video. So I love that. I was honored. I was like, man, the fact that I was able to help, not knowing that was his hero too. You know what I mean? So the fact that I was able to connect those dots was amazing. So, you know, Alex and my man Sil, who does a lot of work with Meek Mill and stuff now too, Philly guy. Sil, they both was on the video, and we knocked it out. We went up to Spike's office and knocked it out. And so it was ill because Spike was like giving them pointers on like, yo, let me see where you got it. Okay, pull the camera back right here. Okay, now zoom in right here. So he threw his hat in a little bit. So, you know, not co-directing it, but, you know, he was giving tips like, yo, yeah, now bring it over this way. Like, and I know my man Alex, I know he was bugging like, yo, like Spike working with my cat. Like, this is crazy. You know what I mean? So, you know, we did that, and then we did the second half of the video at this brownstone of a homie of his, and I think it was in Sunset Park, and Kweli came. You know, he came through and knocked it out, and it was great. It's one of my favorite videos. And I remember when BET played it, and they was like, man, that looks like a Jordan commercial. That could be a free Jordan commercial. The way it's laid out, you know what I mean? But we really knocked that video out the park, man. My man Alex, that was all his vision of like setting up this kind of shrine, like this chair that was like a throne, and then all the Spike stuff around it, the pictures and memorabilia and the posters, and me just sitting on his throne. And then I was dressed like Spike and all that. Like, he really, that was all his vision. You know, it was great.
Wow. And yeah, like to have it come full circle and have someone say that it looks like a Jordan commercial, considering Spike's work on the Jordan commercial.
You know, like it just all made sense, man. It's one of my favorite videos I've ever done. We knocked it out the park. He loved it. It was great.
Yeah, man, it's really a good time. Anyone who hasn't seen it, just go look it up. It's a really nice tribute. I fuck with it a lot. And you know, another thing, like another reason why it's always really cool to see your connection with Spike Lee is because, like I was saying about him kind of throwing it all out there, that's kind of how I feel about a lot of your albums. Like you kind of like you're an idea guy. Like you have concepts, like you have like an overarching concept for a project, and then just like stitch all these little individual thoughts together and kind of make it a whole mosaic, whether that's talking about something like Music for My Friends, or even stuff like In Celebration of Us, and of course All the Brilliant Things. Like y'all have that in common, and I've always appreciated that. So like,
I guess I learned that from him. You know what I mean? Growing up as a kid, I guess I learned that from him. But you nailed it. That's always the MO with my records. And never do I make an album where it's like, yo, let's just make some joints. Let's just make 12, 15 joints and put it on the record. Like, nah. Even if it's a collabo record, like you look at the Easy Truth with Apollo Brown, you look at Retropolitan with Pete Rock, you look at Live from the Tape Deck with Illmind. It's all conceptual, you know? So there's going to be moments that go here and here and here. There's all these branches off a tree, but they're all off one tree. It ain't a branch on this tree and a branch on the tree across the street. And they don't come from the same family. They got to come from the same thing. So, you know, all that's on purpose. It's definitely a point and a method to my madness.
Right, totally. And before we move on to like more like early stuff with the music, I just wanted to say one thing about a song on the Easy Truth since you brought it up. The Stretch and Bob song is one of my favorite things you've ever done. Brilliant idea. Like that was like I remember when I first heard it and I was like, why? Like it's one of those like, why hasn't someone done this before?
Right.
Type ideas. Like I just had to say like that song is amazing, bro. Like
thank you. Yeah, I had the idea to do that, you know, and I did it. We did the verse, you know, we did the recording or whatever, and then Apollo actually put all the interview stuff around it. Like he did that in post-production. He had found a Stretch and Bob interview. They was interviewing Nas when Illmatic was coming out. So that interview was on YouTube and all that stuff. Yeah, so they was interviewing Nas, and you know, so he played it and I heard it, and then I just was responding to the questions as if he was asking them to me. And then later on in post-production, he chopped it up and made it all work. And yeah, I just had this idea to just do that. Like imagine if I was that age back in the early mid 90s and I was on the Stretch and Bob show, you know, everybody went up there and blacked out. So, okay, here's me blacking out on the Stretch and Bob show. And it just made super duper sense.
Yeah. And that was like a claim to make too. Like,
right. It was like, yo, I went up there, you know, it's kind of like with Flex now or Sway now. It was like, yo, I'm Stretch and Bob and I went off for 2-3 minutes, you know, like that was the thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, like kind of, you know, like speaking of Stretch and Bob and like that period of time, like talk to me about like your early experience with music and like falling in love with rap as a young kid.
Oh man, I started rapping when I was 9. I loved it before that, but you know, I was a little kid, so I wasn't thinking about becoming a rapper. But you know, you grow up in Brooklyn in the 80s and 90s, it's around you. Hip hop is around you everywhere. So I lived on the 18th floor in my mother's building, you know, so you look out the window and you see the guys with the Audis and the two-door Jeeps and all that stuff, bumping hip hop, shooting dice, passing, you know, Heinekens around, smoking, and just, you know, cooling out and stuff that you hear me talk about in my music. You see the sales and all types of things going on, for lack of a better term, but hip hop was the soundtrack around that, blasting out of every speaker. Yeah. Then you had the stairwell. Our door was right next to the staircase in the projects, and you hear kids in the stairwell sitting in there with their little speaker, with their little boombox, you know, blasting hip hop. And I'm 5, 6 years old, and you smell the weed coming under the door and all that. Okay, cool. So you're surrounded by hip hop. You're on TV raps and da. You're surrounded by all these things. And I had young parents, so my parents was bumping hip hop, you know. So I say all that to say the average listener right now might think, oh yeah, well, hip hop runs everything. This was a time when hip hop didn't run everything. The time where hip hop was still new, and they said hip hop has 10 years, and this may have been year 10, you know what I mean, or year 11, you know, like this is when it was new. So, you know, it was surrounding me, and I remember I was 9 years old, man, and Video Music Box, Ralph McDaniels, Video Music Box comes on, and it comes on, and I'm watching it like me and my mother did every weekend, and then all I hear is, you know, new music from Chi Ali. Age ain't nothing but a number. And then boom, boom. And I was like, yo, what is that? And I just froze for 3 minutes just watching this video. Little girlie listened to me, stop giggling and kissing to me. And I was like, and as soon as it was done, I was like, I want to do that. And I told my mother, I said, Ma, I want to do that. And I pointed at the TV. She was like, go for it, whatever you want to do. My mother was that type. Like, you know, she still is. She's that type. Oh, do it. If you want to do it, rock. So I'm 9 years old. Most parents would have been like, yeah, all right, whatever. She was like, go for it, you know, and that was it. So that was my first falling in love with this is what I want to do. You know, I was a fan, of course, before that. I was a little kid, though. I was running around playing with toys and cartoons, but that was when I was like, this is what I want to do. And I never looked back. So people always be like, when did you start rapping? When I was 9. When did it become serious? When I was 9. Like, it was serious from day one.
Yeah. And like that's when you know you have something, right? Like when you're like that young and you're like, this is what I want to do. Yeah. And like I understand that you were in Big's area around the time that he passed as well. Because I think you mentioned on It's All Good from Metropolitan, kind of like seeing you mentioned something about Biggie Earn. I can't remember anymore. Damn, I'm blanking on the exact lyric, but yeah. So like you know, like it's obviously around you and like in your it's like in your blood basically. So it's, you know, it's
100%. I mean, I grew up the block from Big, you know what I mean? Right. So like you see these guys every day, and I talk about it on the record. I talk about it on St. James Place in particular, where on St. James Liquors, you know, where I'm like, yo, like you saw this every day. Like these guys was right there, you know, like and that was all the inspiration you needed. So at that point, when Big is blowing up, I'm like 12 years old. I'm already rapping. I'm already thinking I'm gonna get a record deal tomorrow. You know, I'm 12 years old. I'm young and gung ho and just full of ambition. And yeah, I'm gonna get signed tomorrow because, you know, my mother knows so and so who knows so and so, and they know so and so. So I'm gonna get a record deal.
That's like, always it, right?
Yeah,
that's
always it. 11, 12 years old. You know, so that's what I'm thinking. So but then seeing Big and watching them shoot the Juicy video and seeing him go from the guy on the corner, you know, sitting outside blowing the L and kicking it with C's and all of them, to like, yo, they're playing it on the radio. Yo, they're showing the video. Yo, they're doing, and it's like, oh, snap. And you see this thing, and then you see the world going crazy for the guy who lives 45 seconds up the block, who you see every day. And that was all the inspiration. It was like, oh, we good. Like, we could definitely do this because he did it and he's killing it. He's the best. We could definitely do this, you know? And that was it. That was all the inspiration you needed.
Right. And yeah, this was like before Brooklyn became this is before New York and Brooklyn specifically became the center of the universe like it is now. So like, yeah, right. Yeah, at least like to clarify, like in the way that we understand it to be now, because of course,
100%. Yeah, he did that.
Yeah, totally. And so, you know, like you're growing up like this, you're growing up around people like Big, and you're growing up like, you know, like seeing Video Music Box and Chi Lee and all that great stuff. As your relationship with rap and film are kind of like developing side by side, was there ever a moment when you consciously linked the two of them together, where you were like, these two fit together really well and they inform each other in a way that you might not have thought of before?
I think I did it subconsciously. You know, I think as a writer, I always told stories. Some of them were kind of subconscious and, you know, kind of like not in front of you and you had to figure it out. And some of them were straight up blatant stories. This guy went here, that guy went there, and then this guy went around the corner. And then when he went upstairs, he saw this. So then when he left, like that's more blatant and direct, you know, like, you know, that's like warning and somebody's got to die and, you know, one love, like that's that type of story, you know. And I started doing that stuff in my music very early too. It's something I still do. You know, you take a record like Richie off Retropolitan, you take a record like 10 Days off Retropolitan, you take, you know, so many records, man. Like my albums are loaded and littered with stories. So I think subconsciously I did it without realizing that I was writing not to just write and not to just be dope, but writing stories and writing things that I wanted people to see when they heard it, you know. And I didn't say I want to make this like a movie. It was just the way I knew how to write. And that was from growing up around certain guys, growing up in certain eras, listening to certain music, being a fan of films, like you said. And it kind of just came full circle without me realizing.
Yeah. And like, that's how it happens sometimes. Like there isn't always necessarily going to be like a moment where you can see it, but like looking back on it, like, I feel like that's what makes a record like All the Brilliant Things so interesting to me, is because it's so much about like the past, present, and future. Like it's really just you, like kind of like how In Celebration of Us was kind of like you standing at a certain point, looking back, especially in the context of like your son just being born, like this is like this is that on an even grander scale.
Right.
Like
Because
really
that album
the whole...
that album I love, In Celebration of Us. It was my favorite record I had done up until this point. That record, man, I hold that record very, very near and dear to me. And that record was about Black people, Black culture, Black pride, the ups and downs, the pitfalls, the plights, like all of that. I wanted to make the blackest album I could, and without being overtly like I'm Black and I'm bliggity Black and
like the corny shit. Yeah, I feel it.
Like I wasn't coming out dressed in a certain way and doing all that. I just wanted to make an album that really reflected who we are as a people, the things that have been done to us, the things that we've done to ourselves, because that's a reality too. The things that the reasons why we do certain things to ourselves because of 400 plus years ago, and how that thing will never change. And it'll always impact the way we move as Black folk, whether we realize it or not, and whether people around us realize it or not, all those types of things. I wanted to celebrate us. And that's what this is, in celebration of us. And that's why I was titled that. So I wanted to make the blackest album I could. And I felt like I accomplished that. And then with this album, I wanted to really break down gentrification and cultural appropriation and culture vultures and all that type of stuff, and how they go hand in hand. And like you said, it kind of continues on that path. It segues into other things, and it segued off of Retropolitan. Like Retropolitan, I talked about it a little bit, and people took that as, yo, the album's crazy. You talk about, gentrification and all that. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, I did. But man, you haven't heard nothing yet. Like, because this thing I'm about to do next, like that was like the trailer. Like, you know what I mean? That was like, as far as being about gentrification, that album is an amazing album. I love Retropolitan. But as far as it being about gentrification, that was like the trailer to this movie. I mean, like, this is all about that. Like, there is no Eastern Conference All-Stars. There is no, you know what I mean? There's no Carry the Tradition. There's no Glorious. This is solely about gentrification and culture vultures.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And before we move on, I didn't want you to think that I missed that CB4 reference with the blackity black shit. That was.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to CB4.
Chris Rock was he still is so ahead of his time, man. Another Brooklyn guy, Bed-Stuy guy, so ahead of his time, man. Because that movie was decades ahead of his time. You know what I mean? Like, decades. Like, man, that's a good one, man. That's one that people should talk about more.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no. CB4 is incredible. Like, I'm surprised that I don't even know if it's available to stream anywhere. Like, that's a movie that I like. I always want to go back and watch it, and I'm like, I can't find it.
I got the DVD. I'm old school, man. I got DVDs. I still buy DVDs of certain things if it's worth it, because, like you said, we can't stream it no more. So it's like you thinking, we can watch the movie whenever on so and so site. All right, cool, or so and so app, and now it's gone. But if I own that tangible DVD, I can watch it whenever I want. You know what I mean? So I still own a lot of DVDs.
Yeah, I got a whole stockpile of DVDs like at my crib in Jersey. Like that's yeah, that's too real. So before we get into the album proper, I know you've also worked on movies as well. Particularly, you served as a consultant on the movie Patti Cakes back in 2014. So like, I guess I was just wondering, like, how did your experience working on Patti Cakes kind of inform your understanding between the relationship, on the relationship between rap and film?
It was such a learning experience about how films are made, and just getting into the meat and potatoes of all that, and the differences and similarities with creating an album versus creating a movie, and all that type of stuff. And from just the music side, it was dope because, the movie's about a young female white rapper, a little overweight, et cetera, et cetera. So it had all these stripes against her. She's a female, she's white, she's overweight, she's from a small town. She's from a small town in New Jersey. All these different things that go against her making it as a star. And the movie had to prove, this girl is a star. The world just doesn't know it yet. And sometimes she doesn't even know it, but she's a star. So I always tell people it's like a newer generation's version of 8 Mile, a little more comedy in it, but it's this generation's version of 8 Mile in a sense. Like it kind of carries that on. And when they reached out to me, man, J Period put that together. Shout out to J Period. He reached out to me. Yeah, he was friends with the director Jeremy. Shout out to Jeremy, man. Great dude. Jeremy reached out to J Period and was like, man, I'm a fan of Skyzoo. Do you know him? And he was like, yeah, I know Sky. I could plug you with him. And he plugged me up. And Jeremy wanted somebody to come in and be a consultant and teach Danielle McDonald, amazing actress, teach her how to rap. you know, she never rapped in her life. You know, her experience with hip hop was modern day stuff. You know, she loved Nicki, she loved Drake, you know, all that type of stuff, which is great. That's beautiful. This generation, those are the hits and they get busy. So that's great. So Jeremy wanted her to be able to pull off being looked at as a rapper. So when you're at home or you're in a movie theater, you're like, yo, this girl's supposed to blow up because she's really, really dope. You know, if you're trying to sell this story of she's the underdog that you're rooting for, but then she don't sound good, you're like, well, that's why nobody fucking with her, because she's whack. So she had to be believable and had to be dope. So he felt like I was the perfect person for that, him being a fan of mine. So off top, that was a huge honor and I appreciated all that. We met up and, you know, we figured it out. And I was like, yeah, I'm super down. You know, I'm down for all that and let's do it. And Danielle was so awesome, man. Like it was almost like rap school. Like I had to coach her. Like, so, you know, we would get on the phone every day, or we would get up in person 2-3 days a week, and I would have her rhyming. I had her come to Ill Mind Studio, you know, in Bed-Stuy on Nostrand, and that was a grimy block, you know, and she came like by herself, like ready, you know what I mean? Like took an Uber there from her hotel and boom, ready to rock on the grimy block with fiends all around it, you know, and she showed up and she was ill, you know, so yeah, it was dope, man. You know, she nailed it. She knocked it out the park. And then they put me in the movie with a role. And then, you know, they gave me an associate producer credit and some ownership of the movie. Yeah, I'm an associate producer on it. I own a piece of the movie. So it was all amazing, man. It was a really, really great experience. I got a lot of love for those guys, man. And shout out to Jeremy and Danielle McDonald and everybody involved. It was dope, man. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's great. Like, have you ever had the opportunity to work on any other movies in that capacity, or was it just that?
Not yet. I have some things that I'm working on. There's some stuff floating around that I'm involved with. So hopefully that stuff comes out sooner than later. But the funny thing about it is that I've been looking at, you know, writing screenplays. I got a ton of stories and a ton of things I've been writing. I actually have a television series that I've been writing forever, man. I started working on a pilot in like 2008. I just had this idea. I can't get into what it is because it ain't out yet. But I came up with this idea in like 2008 for this pilot, and I had been working on it gung-ho ever since, you know, so it's been a long time just developing characters and stories and ideas and writing some of it. And I actually wrote a full pilot episode and I started writing the second episode. Then I got an idea for 2 other TV shows and I got an idea for 3 movies. And so I got a lot of other things that I'm kind of writing when I'm not writing music, you know, and hopefully getting these things off the ground soon.
That's beautiful. Wow. It's always great to just like, like the ideas just snowball. Like that's how it goes with writing.
You wake up 3 a.m. with an idea and you write it down, you know?
Oh, like, man.
For real.
No, I hear that. And like, and one thing about the way you put stories together, like whether it's through a screenplay or through a song, like there's a line on One Time from Retropolitan that I feel like kind of neatly sums up your general approach to the way that you write. It always sticks out to me whenever I go back and listen to it. It's when you said all coded for who in the scrimmage, so if you didn't get it, you should be lucky that you didn't live it.
Yeah,
like that line just it really just ties everything you do into such a nice, neat little bow. And I was wondering, like, outside of wanting to authentically communicate your own lived experience, like as someone who is steeped in this culture, like, do you feel a responsibility to put on for a specific kind of rap consumer? Because it kind of feels like I feel like you take pride in what you do.
100%.
And
100%.
I
feel a responsibility. I feel a responsibility to the people who have been riding this long and who are vested in what I do and who are super invested in what I do and live and die by my music and love my music and adapt to it and relate to it, and they depend on it, right? So I always compare it to like a restaurant. You go to a pizza shop every day and this is like the best pizza in the world and you love it and it's the pizza you grew up on and everything is great. Then one day you go in there and it's the pizza shop and it's pizza and da-da-da-da-da, but you go in there and they offering you Chinese food. You're like, what? I didn't come here for this. So now you can't trust that pizza shop no more. You know, now you can't trust that. So now you're looking for a new pizza shop. So I look at it the same way where people know what they come to me for. They know it's lyricism. They know it's bar heavy. They know the beats are great. They know it's storytelling. They know everything is cohesive. They know it's a full project. It's never just some joints. They know it's doubles and triple entendres that's going to take them years to fully break down. So it's worth them spending the time to do it. because it's not a lot of music nowadays. You listen to it once and you got it all. So a lot of albums that came on, yeah, that album's dope. I heard it. You heard it once and you got it. You figured it out. You got it. It served its purpose. My music is forever. You listen to it now. You listen to it. Some people still listen to The Salvation. They listen to, you know, The Easy Truth. Listen to Dream Deferred. Those records came out 5-10 years ago, whatever it is. That's the goal. That's what you want, you know. So for me, you come to my spot, you come to my soul food spot, I'm never going to whip out Mexican food. I'm never going to whip out, you know, Thai. As much as I like all that stuff, you came to me for soul food. I got you. Now, tomorrow, you might want Mexican. You can go to those guys across the street, or you can go to the Thai restaurant around the corner. But when you want soul food, you come to me, you know, you're getting the best. And that's the way I look at it. So that's where the responsibility comes in that you mentioned, you know.
Right.
I do have a responsibility to all those people that come to SK Soul Food every day and they want it, you know what I mean? Like, I got a responsibility to those people. But on top of that, I feel like I have a responsibility as far as a voice. You know, as artists, we're supposed to have a voice and use that voice. You look at everything Curtis Mayfield was doing and Marvin Gaye was doing and Gil Scott-Heron and Bill Withers and all these guys. And I feel like a lot of artists in the popular music now don't use that voice or don't adhere to it and don't acknowledge the fact that it's a real thing that they have that voice, because those artists were the popular artists at the time, right? Like Curtis Mayfield was a humongous artist. Marvin Gaye was a humongous artist. Like Bill Withers, these guys were humongous artists. So it wasn't like, oh, they were making that type of music because they was underground and nobody knew about them. No. These were the guys who ran the radio and sold out tours and sold millions of records. Even James Brown, I'm Black and I'm Proud. You know, like he was the biggest artist in the world, sold out the Apollo, sold more records of that Live from the Apollo album than anybody at the time. Like, these are humongous artists. He's like the equivalent of Drake. And he made, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. You know what I mean? Like, that was the responsibility kicking in. Like, yo, we have this huge voice where we're the biggest artists in the world. We're supposed to use that voice. Just like in the movie, like One Night in Miami, you know, when they were talking, when Malcolm X was talking to Sam Cooke about it, like, yo, you have this huge voice. You got to use it in a certain way. And then he did, you know? So I feel that responsibility. And I think a lot of the main artists and the popular artists, they don't adhere to it, or they know they have it, but they wait for someone else to do it. Because they're like, if I do it, it'll jeopardize this bag. It'll jeopardize this brand. It'll jeopardize this meeting I got with Sprite tomorrow. It'll jeopardize this Nike deal I got on the table for, you know, 10 M's. I get all that. And I'm not telling you walk away from that, because I'm not walking away from 10 M's, but there's a way to do both. There's a way to maneuver around it. It takes intelligence, and you smart, you can figure it out. You know, it takes intelligence. Right. You know what I mean? It takes a way to do both and finesse it and maneuver it and still take care of your family for life. You know, so I feel a responsibility on that sense more than anything. And I've always vowed to live up to that responsibility.
I feel it. And it's great that you mentioned Marvin Gaye, because What's Going On just turned 50, like not even a month ago. And like
or something,
and you're like, think about how we think, like, not even just like that, like the album, of course, but like that song, it's lived for 50 years, and not just like lived, but like everyone knows that song.
Right.
And like, and like you said, like that was just like the popular song. It wasn't like some song that started out like nothing and then gradually grew over 50 years. Like that was
huge. And you know, the stories of Motown, like not really being with it because they was a little afraid of, you know, you records for the bedroom and the ladies love you and all that. And now you want to go this way and get your Gil Scott-Heron on, you know what I'm saying? And all that, you know, they thinking about the bag and their business. So they're supposed to, but as an artist, you're supposed to push back and be like, nah, we got it. You know, and it worked. Obviously it worked and it rang off, and, you know, there we are.
Absolutely. So, and it's interesting that you just mentioned voice, because you also just underwent the surgery for the polyp that was on your throat. And like a rapper losing their voice is probably like the scariest thought imaginable. Like that, like,
no, it was real. It's kind of like when Adele lost hers, and you know, I guess she's freaking out or whatever. I get it, man. I went through it, you know. I was on tour. With Elzai. We was on the Retropolitan tour, and, you know, we toured a lot. We toured heavy, night after night, no real off days and no real breaks. And you're really just going hard every night. You're on stage for an hour and change, going crazy. And it just started for a while. It was slowly getting raspier and raspier. And, you know, you don't think nothing of it. All right, little by little, it like chips away like paint. Like, all right, whatever.
Right.
And then one night I'm on stage and it's just really bad. And I was voiceless. I had to do a lip sync show because I had no voice. You know, literally, I had no voice. And I was shook. I was like, yo, as soon as I go home, I got to get this figured out. And we had like 5 more dates on that tour. And thank God I was able to get through it. You know, he gave me my voice back the next day where like it came back a little bit, enough for me to finish the tour. And as soon as I got home, I went to the doctors and, you know, it was like, yo, you have a polyp on your vocal cord and it's pretty significant. It's pretty big. And it was like, we got to get this thing out and see if it's cancerous and, you know, make sure everything's cool. So I underwent the surgery. Thank God it wasn't cancerous and everything was smooth. And I couldn't talk for a month, you know, I had to slowly get my voice back. And then when I got my voice back, I had to learn how to work my voice again. So I remember the first time I recorded, because I got the studio in the crib, like I record everything at home. I have a full studio in my house.
Right.
So I go in the basement and I said, let me just play around a little bit. You know, the album wasn't done. I was like, let me just play around a little bit and throw on whatever and just mess around. And I went to mess around and I didn't like how I sounded at all. I hated it. And I got shook. And I remember saying, yo, I think I'm done. I think I'm out. I think I'm gonna just tap out and leave this alone because I can't do it right. It's like if you have ACL surgery, you tear your ACL, and after a year you come back and your cross ain't right, or your hand, you got all the mechanics, everything is good, but it's something not hitting right, you know.
Yeah,
like
the hardware is messed up.
Yeah, it just wasn't right, you know. So my pen was still moving, like I was writing when I couldn't speak, so my pen was still moving. Everything was great on that front, but when I kicked it, it was like, oh, I'm trying to go left and come back, and I just can't the same way. But after like a week or two, it came all the way back, and then boom, I got back to my AI shit. You know what I mean? Like boom, I'm back. So now I'm 100% fine. I record all the time. You know, obviously I finished the album and then, you know, been doing feature work and other things and other projects I'm working on. I sound 100% back to normal. So I'm all the way good. But I had to warm up after like a week. You know, that first week was rough, but I'm all the way good now. Everything's good.
No, that's great to hear because like that's your instrument. And and like to have it threatened like that is a lot. And I know you said that you were you posted a couple of times about like wanting to try to finish the album before you got the surgery done, and it sounds like you did, and it sounds great. So
no, I finished it after the surgery. I did half of it before and then half of it after. So it's ill. Like when you listen to it, some of the records I sound a little raspier and some of them I don't. So you can kind of tell which ones were before and after the surgery.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Which I loved because when you go back to like Ready to Die, it sounds like there's 2 biggies on there. Like it's the high pitched, you know, so you want to be hardcore with the gat, the back, what about the gats in your raps. And then there's the, who the fuck is this? Paging me your 546. So it's like 2 different biggies rhyming on it. The first half is like he was all new and young and excited, and then the second half he might have been working on the album for a couple of months and got really comfortable in his voice and all that stuff. And this album sounds like that, where the first half is raspier because I still have the polyp, and the second half is when it was gone and I'm kind of back to normal, like the new voice, the brand new shiny voice. So it's cool. Like I like that element of it. You know, they don't sound too extremely different where it's like, yeah, it's 2 different people. It's just a little bit. It's a little bit. You can hear, you know, what records? What did I do before the surgery? Like Soft Eyes was before the surgery.
Yeah, I could tell that, definitely.
Yeah, St. James Liquors was before the surgery. Tour the Neighborhood, Free Jewelry, those were all before the surgery. But then like Culture-ish was after the surgery, and Something to Believe In was after the surgery, and you know, just What Money Taught Us was after the surgery. So it's cool. I like that element of it.
See, I hadn't even thought about that, especially like talking about the whole past, present, and future thing and doing like a timeline. Like that's like that's a subtle element that kind of adds to that whole time. Yeah. See,
no, it's cool.
You're already going crazy, bro. So now we're here and we can talk about All the Brilliant Things.
Let's
which first and foremost, like the title, which you've kind of gone at a little bit, like kind of explaining how this whole, I mean, obviously we were just talking about the whole cultural appropriation and culture vulturing thing, and how like these, like you kind of broke down how to you these systems, while they're really horrible and they affect millions, even billions of people, like they're brilliant in their design because of how like nefarious they are to just like sneak in and just like completely go through everything. So like so just like walk me through where the initial idea of All the Brilliant Things came from.
just walking around my neighborhood, being fed up. Like, just walking around my neighborhood and being fed up, corner stores turned into condos. You're like, what the fuck, man? I used to go to the corner store, get a turkey, bacon, egg, and cheese, and now it's just fucking condo. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just being fed up. That's all it really was. It wasn't too much deeper than that. It became deeper when obviously I'm writing it. But the reasoning behind it was very matter of fact. It was like, this is whack. It was like, this is whack. And people don't really understand it. And you're watching like old ladies get moved out the neighborhood, and you're watching people not being able to afford where they live, and you're watching all these different changes. You're watching people move into the neighborhood who act like you're not there. So, I'm walking my dog, you walking yours, but because you look more like, Phoebe and Chandler on Friends, and I look more like Strike Dunham, whatever. Okay, cool. I'm walking my Yorkie, you walking yours. I got Yorkie too, so whatever. I don't got no pit bull. Like, it's cool, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, we both got $2,000 dogs, you know what I'm saying? So like, whatever. So, I'm walking my dog, you walking yours. And if I say, how you doing? You don't say anything, or you look down, or you look away, or you pretend you're on your phone, because in your mind, you don't have to acknowledge me because you think I'm gonna be gone in a year. Those things really happen. And that's the reasoning behind it. It's like, we don't gotta acknowledge these people over here. This is gonna be ours soon. All we got to do is wait it out. And that's where the frustration and all that type of stuff came from. And then even with the cultural stuff as well, you look at, the way our art and our culture is being used in the media. And that's fine because we're getting paid off of it. It's great. Hip hop runs the world. And we wanted that. We wanted that since the 70s and 80s. We wanted hip hop to be respected and people to know that it was a real thing that was going to be here forever, like jazz, like rock, like R&B, like the blues, like country music, like folk. We wanted people to respect us the same way, and we got that. So the fact that our art and culture is being used so heavily to promote this product and that product, that's beautiful. Let's do it. But then when it gets to the point of exploiting, and it gets to the point of now you're using people who don't even look like what you're representing and selling to sell this and represent this. And then my thing, even deeper than that, becomes the people who cover our art and our culture and our fashion and all of that feel like they have the right and the gall and the audacity to dictate how we go about what we do and what's real and what isn't in our world. And it's like, how dare you? Either enjoy it or don't. It doesn't mean everything is going to be great that happens in our culture. Nah, some people design clothes and the shit is trash. A lot of people make music and the shit is trash. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is. But don't sit there feeling like you can dictate us and tell us what to do. You either enjoy it or you don't. And if you don't enjoy it, step away from it. The example I've been using on this whole press run is, imagine me telling a 75-year-old Italian grandma how to make chicken parm and how to mix Italian food. I could never. Like, the audacity of that. I could never. That it's in her blood, man. Like, she was making spaghetti and Alfredo noodles from scratch with the egg and it like from scratch. Like, who am I to tell her, yo, this ain't real Italian food? That's a lot of audacity, man. You know what I mean? So I can either enjoy her cooking, or if I don't like the way she put that together, I can go to another Italian grandma and eat, but I can never tell her she ain't real and don't know what she's doing. Right. That's her. You know what I mean? But we're the only culture and the only people when we allow that shit all the time. We've been allowing it since jazz. We've been allowing it since rock. We've been allowing it since R&B. You got this whole blue-eyed soul and all that. We've been allowing it forever. And we're the only ones who do that. No one else does that. No one else lets that happen to what they create. Even outside of music. It's not just about music. And outside of that, no one lets their culture get taken over like that and controlled. And now you telling us what's real and what's not. Don't ever tell me what's real New York, or what's real Brooklyn, or what's real hip-hop, or what's tapping into my people. Ever. Unless you look like me and you come from where I'm from and you're a part of where I'm from. Like, you could say that, is we from a similar place. We've gone through similar experiences, even though you're from Jersey and whatever, we may not live the same life. If we walk down the street, they're going to look at me the way they look at you, and vice versa. So you understand these plights. You understand what I'm talking about. If certain records come out, or we go back to certain records that came out at a certain time, we know what that felt like being young Black men in this world. We knew what it felt like when this record came out, or when this record came out, or when we had to have the Jordan 3s, or when we had to have this coat, and we had to have this JanSport bag. You understand that. You know what I mean? Because it's a similar thing. If you're not part of this, there's no way you can understand that. But you're the one that's dictating what is and what isn't. Don't dare. You know what I mean? That's all this is about.
Right. And that's it reminded me of there's a bit on Atlanta, Donald Glover's Atlanta, the Juneteenth episode when oh man, Zazie Beetz, I forget her character's name right now. It's gonna kill me. But she's sitting with like they're at this lady's house. They're at a Juneteenth celebration, and she's a dark-skinned black woman. She's married to this white dude who's like obsessed with black culture. Like he's been to Africa. He's hanging out with the brothers. Like he was in the fraternity. He's giving people Hennessy. Like it's all this shit. And like she tells a story. She tells a little anecdote about how he told her grandmother that she made her collard greens wrong. And like you know, like it's like that, you know, like how are you gonna tell a black grandmother how to make collard greens?
Like do you understand why we even eat those or what they made? But like, do you understand any of that? You know what I mean? So it's that same thing, man. And then these people, even when they do it, they don't do it in a way to help. They do it in a way to tear down and look like I'm better than. Like, yeah, whatever. That's whatever. He ain't even doing it right. She ain't even doing it right. I'm better than that. Like, you're a peon. Like, who are you? Like, you know, and there's not enough people asking that question. There's not enough people stopping that shit from happening. And this is hopefully the start of us just getting some control back with this shit. And it's not about a race thing. Like, what I don't want people to do is hear the album and be like, oh, Skyzoo don't like white people. Of course not. Like, some of my closest friends are white. Some of my closest business partners are white. I've made a lot of money with different types of people, black, white, Asian, you know, Hispanic, whatever. Like, you know, none of that stuff matters. It's just about what's happening with the culture, because those people I just named, they never come at me in that regard. You know, it's not like they're yes men or anything like that. They never come at me in that regard because they know they're not from my walk of life. They get what I'm doing and they understand why I'm doing it. Excuse me. They support and they push and they're fans and they love it and enjoy it. But they don't come at me like, oh, you know, you can't do this because of that, or any other artist who they may not know. They don't come at, oh, you can't do this because, nah, like they just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. It's cool. Right.
Totally. Yeah. And like as a critic, as someone who like writes stuff like that and like really tries as hard as I possibly can to have some measure of like understanding and give context where I can, you know, like I think like it's really about that balance. It's about finding the balance between like critiquing something in a way that doesn't make it seem like, oh, I just don't get this and I think it's stupid, so I'm just going to tear it down just cuz, you know, like it's a really, you know, like speaking from the music writer's perspective, it's a really tight rope to walk. And not everyone can do it well, obviously, but
for sure, man, but everyone thinks they can. Everyone thinks they can, you know.
Everyone's a critic, you know what it is.
Right, and it's a whole nother issue.
Right, absolutely. But while we're here talking about all the brilliant things, I really just wanted to go through, since you were so nice to send through the lyric sheets, which thank you again, by the way.
So good.
I kind of wanted to jump through five or six songs that kind of stood out to me, if that's cool with you. Cool. All right. Yeah. So I mean, of course, we got to start off with Free Jewelry, because like it's just there's three different beat changes across it, and all three of them are classic samples. So and like the first thing that stuck out to me outside of the sample was the fact that you started the song with this little story that you made out of all your album titles.
Yeah.
Which like it caught me off guard, until like I think it took me until Music for My Friends where I was like, wait a minute, and I went back and then
right. You're like, oh, so that's like, what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. So like it almost seems like you made those titles. It almost seems like you made those titles to do that. I mean, I'm sure you didn't, but like,
right. It just fell into place that way. Yeah, it just happened spontaneously. Like walking in the booth, I didn't write that down. Walking in the booth, I was just like, you know, salvation, dreams, and I was like, oh, okay. And then it kind of just happened. You know what I mean? That was just God in the room, you know.
Yeah, it was just a really nice moment that, you know, like for the fans, I just
for
thought
my diehard fans to be like, oh shit, yeah, look what he did, and then it gets you excited for what's about to happen, and you like, yo, here we go. You know, it was just a nice thing.
Right, and you know, of course, the like you were saying, the song kind of brings all these issues out to the forefront and directly addresses the media perceptions that you were just talking about, you know, like a couple minutes ago, and really just like rings that out in a way that's like, hey, like I understand that you have a perspective here, but like you need to understand when it's your time to just kind of like not say anything and just, like you said,
Or
appreciate
just
it.
if you're gonna say it, just understand what you're saying and why you're saying it, and you know, like it's so layered, man. But you get it, you
Totally.
get it clearly.
No, of course. And of course, you know, for me, you know, being the movie guy, the one thing that stood out to me here was when you say my whole catalog is like I'm shooting a Spike joint.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so like just as like a random question, like which Spike Lee movie do you feel is the closest to the tone you're trying to set with this album?
Do the
Because
Right Thing, for sure.
okay,
Without a doubt, because that
okay.
movie, the neighborhood, and you know, the moments of gentrification where, you know, dude ran over his sneaker and he had the Celtics jersey on, and you know, and that was 89, man, that Spike was talking about that stuff, you know. So that was eons ago, you know. And
Right.
you know, bugging out is like, motherfucker, gentrification. That was, you know what I mean, that was a law, that was 89, and that
Yep.
was written in that script, you know. So without a doubt, Do the Right Thing would be the one that kind of mirrors this the most.
And yeah, that makes sense because you use the mayor, like clips from the mayor and Mother Sister throughout the album
Right.
too.
Mm-hmm.
So makes perfect sense to hear that. And then, you know, from there, another one that stuck out to me was A Tour of the Neighborhood, which is to me like that. And I think St. James Liquors are kind of like extensions of the ideas on Free Jewelry, but you're using your personal details to kind of bring this whole experience to life. You know, like talking about like bodega credit and splitting the hero with the dime piece, and
Mm-hmm.
like,
All that stuff happened.
you know, like Brooklyn wanting to, you know, like people wanting to rep Brooklyn because it's Brooklyn.
Right.
And another thing that really stuck out was you growing up in a house, and you said that like you had like Leroy Campbell wallpaper.
Yeah, Leroy Campbell, like wallpaper. Yeah, and that's,
It was
people
beautiful.
may or may not get, you know, what that means. I mean, Leroy Campbell is a highly esteemed artist,
Yeah.
who actually used to live in my neighborhood back then. Like, he lived in the neighborhood. He had a gallery. Was he on DeKalb? I don't remember exactly where, but my pops used to go to his gallery and cop stuff from him directly. Now he lives in Atlanta, and I cop stuff from him directly. You know what I mean? So it's cool.
Right.
But Leroy Campbell's cost, man, like they cost a bag. They start at like 1,200-1,300 for a piece. And my pops has like 30 Leroy Campbell pieces in the crib, you know? So I was this kid growing up in the neighborhood, St. James, up the block from Big. And it was all this action and activity going on outside, and dice rolls and weed smoke and blah, 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 and a shot or two here and there, and just all this activity that you hear about on Ready to Die, because that album is about my block. But then I would go in the crib and my pops is playing CD 101.9, and, you know, my mom's is making dinner, and, you know what I mean, you know, and all these different things. And you know, it Leroy Campbell's is all over the wall. So it was this world and this world, and they were so opposite one another, but they all made sense in me becoming who I am. And that's what that's about.
Right. And that really stuck. Like, I can relate to that, which really helped me connect to this song. And I want to touch on that a little later because I feel like that kind of comes back on I Was Supposed to Be a Trap Rapper. But before we get to that one, I wanted to talk about Bodega Flowers, produced by Karl Marx. I meant to mention all the producers. Free Jewelry was Zarek Beats. A Tour of the Neighborhood was Thelo Martin. Shout out to Thelonious, that's the boy. Karl Marx did Bodega Flowers. So
Yeah.
Of course we're running with the idea here of giving someone their flowers while they can still smell them, which is something we all talk. Like it's very specific. Like it's of course a general thing, but I also feel like it's very specific to rap. Like we like within hip hop culture, we always talk about giving people their flowers. Like
it's a new thing. It's a new thing in the past couple years that I think is great. We weren't like that in hip hop. You know, I tell people all the time, I get DMs from people and they'll be like, yo, man, I just wanted to hit you up. You know, I ain't a dick rider or nothing, but I love your music, man. I appreciate it. And then I'm like, thank you, for one. For two, you don't have to preface it with that.
Yeah, like
showing me love doesn't make you a dick rider. Like hitting me 100 times a day about stupid shit and just wanting to say hi kind of makes you a dick rider. But like just saying, yo, I love your music, man. Your music helped me through this, changed my life. Can't wait to see your next show. Can't wait for your next album. That doesn't make you a dick rider. That makes me somebody to be like, yo, I rock with you. When you come to the show, let me know who you are and we'll grab a drink, or, you know, we'll take a flick, you know, because it's love, right. You know what I mean? And I tell people as independent artists in this day and age, we need that love, because a lot of times the love is what pushes you through if you're not getting your just due from the media and you're not getting, you know, the you're not getting 80 grand a show and all that type of stuff. So it's the love that pushes you through. Like, yo, you know what? I know this is going this way instead of that way, but the love makes me want to do it. So I tell people, man, like, give it up. It's cool. I have no problem telling my heroes or people I listen to or people I like that they're doing. I mean, I made a whole record about Spike Lee, you know, like, right. You know, like I have no problem giving people them flowers, man. And I love the fact that it's become a thing nowadays. It was overdue. So I love the fact that it's become a thing that everyone wants to do. People putting flower emojis up and, yo, you better give so-and-so they flowers, be like, that's dope, you know. But with this record, it's about us getting our flowers from all these people who have taken from us within our culture and who run this culture now that we've created, and they just took it and ran with it and now they control it. It's about giving us our flowers and appreciating us for what we brought to the table and what we've done before it's too late, before we start snatching them shits. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, that's why I said, you know, ain't a flower missing, ain't a reason to snatch yours at all. Like I'm saying, like, all right, there's not a flower missing over here. All right, cool. I don't got to take yours. You know what I mean? Like, we good now. If I'm missing some flowers, then I'm taking yours, you know, and that's what I'm saying. And I'm speaking for us as a people, you know, as Black creatives and Black people living in our neighborhoods and who we are. I'm speaking for creatives and people marching in the street and people fighting for all these different things that are going on. And that's what I'm saying. Like, yo, respect us, understand us, love us the way you love our culture and all that. And that's what that record's about.
Totally. And I was really struck by this image of you, like there, like I forget the exact line, but there's like an image of you getting flowers from the bodega and passing them to people in the hood. And like that really stuck out to me. Like just like being you specifically, like not even just like any one particular person, you.
Right.
Skyzoo specifically handing like that's like that kind of local like hand-to-hand type shit. Like that's really important.
And there's people I talk about on my records who nobody would know unless you lived in my neighborhood, you know, like people that things have happened to. You know, there was a dude named Kelly, rest in peace to Kelly. I talk about him on this album a little bit, and I've spoken about him in records in the past. I actually put his picture in the Celebration of Us artwork. Kelly was an old dude. He was like the mayor. He was just like the mayor and do the right thing, literally, you know. He was an older guy who lived outside, and everybody in the neighborhood knew Kels. Everybody knew him. And he was a, you know, grandpa type dude, and he took care of the neighborhood. He would literally sweep the neighborhood every day. Wasn't crazy, wasn't quote unquote mentally ill, nothing. Loved the block, loved the neighborhood. And he lived outside. But like he didn't have a home to sweep up. So he would sweep up the block, the neighborhood. He would shovel the street, not asking for money. You know, all the leaves would come down, you know, when the spring hit, and he would sweep the floor. Boom, he would sweep. You know what I'm saying? But he had his issues. He was an addict and da-da-da-da-da. But he was awesome. He wouldn't let nothing happen. If a lady came home in the middle of the night, 3 a.m, and something was going on, maybe her and her boyfriend was beefing, Kelly would get in the mix and be like, yo, chill, we not doing that over here. You know what I mean? Kelly got killed by some young kids where there's some kids who came to the neighborhood who wasn't from the neighborhood, and they was making some noise, and blah, he was telling them, chill out. Like, yo, chill the fuck out. It's 3 a.m, people sleeping, and they popped him. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I talk about Kelly on the record a lot, you know, rest in peace to Kelly. And you know what I mean? Like I say all that on, I think I spoke about him on Soft Eyes when I said, added happy trees where bodies decorate the floor. Rest in peace to Kelly and the homies that came before, because Kelly got killed in front of a tree. So, you know, they found him laying in front of the tree. So that's why I said, rest in peace to Kelly, you know, and I said, added happy trees and where bodies decorate the floor. I'm talking about him. And I'm like, rest in peace to Kelly and the homies that came before, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So that's just an example. So like, you know, that's a guy nobody would know unless you lived on my block, you know what I mean? But, you know, if you lived on my block, you know Kelly. But just because people don't know him don't mean I'm not going to mention him and give him some love. You know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of the shit I'm talking about, you know, with bodega flowers and all that.
Yeah, like that's what makes you you. And that kind of goes back to the whole authenticity thing. Like you're being true to yourself and being true to your neighborhood. And that's what people expect from, and like, forget what people expect from you. That's what you take pride in. And Absolutely. It's important. And it's great to hear you like explicitly put that forward on a song in that way.
Yeah.
I thought that was really clever.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
No, of course. And then we move on to and then now we're at I Was Supposed to Be a Trap Rapper, produced by the guy J.R. Swifts and Artie Mitchell. Mm-hmm. And you know, like you kind of we kind of touched on this before, this whole you know, like reconciling these two different aspects of like the area you're living in, like seeing all the wild shit happening outside and having something a little more Just like, I guess the word I'm looking for is like,
it's kind of a balance, you know. It kind
yeah,
of was like
definitely.
yin and yang. It kind of was the yin and yang. Yeah, that was how I grew up. You know what I mean?
Right. And you bring that to the music, like with I was supposed to be a trap rapper. And one of the things I love about this song is that you show how many similarities there are between a so-called trap rapper and a so-called backpack
Worlds.
rapper.
Yeah.
Because like for me personally, I remember when Doom passed away. And like that hurt because that's my favorite rapper ever. Wow. And so in 2019 there was this little fight on Twitter happening about like between like Doom and Gibbs, like who was the better rapper, and people were like comparing and contrasting like the things that they talked about. And the first thing I noticed was like, are y'all like listening to the things that Doom is saying? Like you like go you go listen to Operation Doomsday, and he's talking about like moving weight and a whole bunch of crazy shit. Like everybody always thinks about like the superhero stuff and the cartoon stuff, which is awesome. That shit is great. But like Doom went through some shit and he rapped about it in this, and like I was just like, these two rappers who you think are so diametrically opposed aren't really that.
Exactly.
And that's and that's what stuck out to me when I was supposed to be a trap rapper. I just love that you took the time to be like, hey, these two supposedly different types of rap are not that different.
Yeah. Like, and you know, the idea came from my fans, who I love dearly because they've made my life what it is. My fans don't know the world I grew up in and how different it is from what they think. Like you would think, fans of mine may think, you know, this guy who grew up like this and all he was around was this type of music and this type of whatever, and listening to, you know, Dead Prez and Black Star and all that, which I did, you know, and that's what I'm saying on the record. My friends wasn't listening to none of that. My friends was listening to what was hot on the radio. My friends was listening to street rap, trap rap, you know, whatever. Trap rap didn't exist then, but what that represents, they was listening to that, and now they into trap rap and drill rap and all that. When it comes to my side of the fence, the only thing they listen to on my side of the fence is me. They love me. They're like, Sky's the greatest rapper ever. Nobody's nicer than him. Sky was killing people since we was 12 years old. He's still killing people however many years later, and all that good stuff. But they don't, you know, they don't listen to anything else on my side of the fence. You know, so what I'm saying in that record is based on the neighborhood I grew up in, the stuff that I saw, my best friends who I was around every day, who I'm still around. I was supposed to be that type of musician. I was supposed to be a guy who would make records for that lane because that's the lane I grew up in. I just busted left, you know. So I was coming home with Slum Village CDs and, you know, talking about Little Brother shows that I was going to, like, yo, I'm going to the Little Brother show. And my friends was like, okay, like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, Little Brother's the dopest shit out. And they're like, oh, okay, no doubt. And they would go back to listening to whoever was popping in, you know, 03, 04. You know what I mean? Like, it was that type of thing. And I'm like, yo, Slum Village, Jay Dilla, Little Brother, Dead Prez, Black Star. But I'm also listening to the other stuff. You know, I'm also listening to all the Rough Rider stuff. You know, my favorite group ever is the Lox. You know what I mean? Of course, yeah. Like, that's why I said on the record, you know, the tug of war from LB and LOX. You know what I mean? Like that, there was a tug of war. Like, yo, I love y'all and I love y'all. And then, you know what I mean? I'm being pulled, which is great because it's just about being a fan of music. And a lot of the people, a lot of fans just don't get that. And I'm like, yo, don't get it twisted. Like, I was supposed to be this type of guy. I didn't grow up in that type of world at all. I just chose to get into that world because I liked it and I liked the lyricism and I liked the beats and I loved, you know, the listening. Great, incredible, classic, you know, but my world didn't look like that. I just thought it was an amazing record and I still do, you know. So to my fans and to the listeners and to the people who may not be fans or the critics or whatever, it's not just about talking to my fans, the critics and the people who whatever, like, yo, don't get it fucked up. Like, this is who I really am at heart in certain regards, not all regards, but certain regards, because it isn't a facade. I'm not putting on a suit because, yo, this is the shit that's working, this backpack shit, so let's do it. No. Like, I love the music I make. I love, you know, the listening and you know, Fantastic Volume 2. And I literally love that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's a part of me. but there's also this other side that I love as well, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then at the end, when I flip it, that's just a proof of, yeah, I was supposed to be this type of guy. Let me prove it to you. Because anybody could have heard that and been like, oh yeah, all right, okay, all right, I'm gonna show you. I was supposed to be that guy, you know.
Put the fine point on it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's great because while you don't explicitly say that there's similarities between these two things, like that's kind of the implication is like these, or at least is what I got from it.
For sure.
Like it's like that's important to me because I'm just at the point in my life personally where I'm over people like dunking on a specific kind of rap because it's about a certain, and it's just like, grow up, like chill,
just
stop
enjoy
that.
It. Enjoy what you enjoy, and if you don't, you don't. And what I was saying to somebody recently too is that like I think a lot of it the fans do, but they do it with good intentions.
Right, of course.
Like the fans draw this humongous line in between the two worlds. But their intentions are great. Their intentions are, yo, that shit over there is bullshit, man. That shouldn't exist. That shouldn't live. That shit is fucked up. We about this right here, you know? And they have great intentions. But I'm like, yo, you don't know how many rappers on one side of the fence love the rappers on the other side. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know how many quote unquote backpack underground rappers love trap shit and mainstream shit and Drake shit and whatever. And you don't know how many of those guys love LB and love Tribe and love Skyzoo and love Doom and love, like, yeah, the line don't even really exist when it comes to the artist. It ain't about it being blurred. It don't even exist when we get together. But it's the fans who take this paint can and this paint roller and draw this huge line in the middle of the street, you know?
And yeah, like Drake is a perfect example of that. Like Drake was rapping like Fonte. Like
that's probably his favorite artist ever. You know what I mean? Like,
you know, like it's just
like Tay is probably Drake's favorite artist ever.
Absolutely, even if he'll never say it. Even if he'll never say
I'm just, you know, based off of like the early stuff and who he, you know, what he does and who he became, you know, like, so it's just like, yo, like, come on, like let's get a grip on this thing. So that's all that was, and it just made a lot of sense within the context of the record. It was an idea that just hit me one day. You know, the way I make my records, I come up with song titles first, song titles and album titles. So I'll have a list of titles in my phone before I write one rhyme or one word or one song. I'll just have a list of song titles that I've been kind of accumulating over some time. And I just thought of that title one day. It just hit me. I was like, I was supposed to be a trap rapper. Yo. And then I called JR. I was like, yo, I got this idea and I think you're the one to do it as far as the beat. And I gave him the sample. I was like, chop this joint up and let's go here and do this and do that. I was like, I think you're the one to do it. You're absolutely the one who would make sense on this record. And we knocked it out.
Yeah, shout out to JR because he and Elzai did that album, and that album's incredible. Seven times down, 8 times up. Good shit. Okay, so not to take up too much more of your time, let's move on to Bed Stuy Burning.
Yeah,
which is the lead single for this album and was inspired by you reading Brian Platzer's 2017 novel called Bed Stuy Burning, and like talk to me about how that kind of inspired this whole kind of credo, because like I feel like this is where the gentrification aspect of the album really comes through, and like you make it super,
like you see the neighborhood literally on fire, you know. I saw the book. Angela Yee had posted the book a while ago on her page, and you know, I follow her, whatever, and I saw it and I was like, oh shit. And I just stopped and I was like, what's that? And I looked it up and I bought it and had it ordered to the crib and I read it and I was like, yo, this is crazy. And it was the title that got me more than anything. Even before I read it, it was just the title. It was so strong. It just spoke volumes. And I was like, hell yeah, I got to make a record called Bed Stuy Burning. But I didn't want to I didn't want to take the title exactly from the book at first. So I was going to flip it. And I think I was going to call it like A Fire Sale in the Sty. And I was like, yeah, but that's kind of wordy and long, a lot of syllables. Right. I just didn't love the title because I say it in the hook, which I love it in the hook, but titling a song that just seeing Bed Stuy Burning, it just said, oh my gosh, it speaks fine. Like if you saw that on your phone or on your computer or whatever, new single Bed Stuy Burning, you're like, whoa, because some people might see Fire Sale in the Sty and not know what the sty is. And just seeing, you know, Bed Stuy Burning, it just would knock people away and be like, oh, I gotta hear this. Fuck is he talking about? I gotta hear this, you know. And I just ran with it, and I was like, I don't know who do this, who wrote the book, but I'm just running, you know what I mean? And we did it and all that. And then the funny thing was that he reached out and he loved it. He loved it and went crazy. He was like, yo, this is incredible. Like he loved it. And we got really cool. We're cool now. You know, like we did that spawned into a dope relationship with us. Like we text and kick it and all that. And yeah, he loved it. He was like, man, what you did with that record just was 20 times more than I did with the book. He literally said, like, what you did with that record is 20 times more than I did with the book. Like you really just took it to a whole new level that I'm just in awe of. And the book is great. So to say that, you know, it's incredible. It's humbling.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, like so like for anybody listening who's not familiar with the book, it's about a white guy specifically, who moves to Bed-Stuy. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like he kind of writes about the neighborhood as a new transplant. And Sky flips it and writes it as someone who's from the area and is like, hey,
watching those guys come in. Yep.
Exactly. 100%. And at the end, you know, like this is something that I feel like a lot of people can relate to, just the idea of like people not from the neighborhood, like watching a show from their rooftop and like cursing out the show, just like that's why, you know, you came for this. Right. But you don't like it, and you want it to go.
I remember being at one of the Spike Block parties because, you know, I would always go to all of them. I wouldn't miss one, and I remember being at one of the Spike Block parties and seeing the people on the roof who live on that block now, live on Stuyvesant and all that, just standing on the roof looking down with like disgust or like, when is this going to be over type shit. You know what I'm saying? And that's where that line on the third verse came from. Like, yeah, you came here for this. This is the block they shot the movie on. I mean, this is the block that. Right. Every year there is a block party here and everybody knows it. It's one day. It's great. The music's great. Celebs are there. Cool people. Bunch of nutcrackers that you can drink. This is great. And it's only for like 8 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you don't like it, just take a trip to, you know, Long Beach or something and go to the beach, or just, you know, take a trip to, you know, go to Manhattan for a while. Take your kids to the MoMA or something like that. Like, but it's a day and it's great. Leave it alone. You know what I mean? Like, and, you know, I've seen it, you know, and I just tired of it.
Yeah, I get it. It's a lot, and it's getting worse, which is why it's getting worse, and it's happening all over, which is, you know, like even the area like I grew up in the burbs, and even the burbs are kind of sort of getting gentrified in a way.
It's like everything, man. And that's the beauty of the record, and that's why I flipped it in the hook where I named different cities and all that, because it ain't just a New York thing, it ain't just a Brooklyn thing. It's happening everywhere else. I mean, seeing it firsthand in Brooklyn, and I think it hit Brooklyn harder than it hit anywhere else. Like how vast it is, like how it was here and now it's all the way over there. It hit Brooklyn more than it hit anywhere else as far as just the impact. But it's happening everywhere. I got friends in Detroit, Chicago, LA, being in Atlanta now, living in Atlanta, like all that. Like I see it everywhere, you know. And I've had people hit me, man, when the record dropped. People was hitting me from Berlin, people was hitting me from London, people was hitting me from Australia saying the same thing. Like, yo, it's happening here too. It's happening here too, you know?
Yeah, it's just wild to think about. And like, it's really like it affects everyone, you know, like it affects certain people in certain areas more than others, but it really affects everyone. Like that's the thing that you really hit the nail on the head with by like doing the thing with the hook, especially. Like that was a nice touch. And the last song that I wanted to talk about is the closing song, Soft Eyes, produced by Twami, who's amazing. Twami's that guy. Wonderful. All his work with Fly Anakin and Concept Jackson. Shout out to the whole Mutant Academy. They're all so dope. So most of this song is really about your legacy and how, and like where you kind of see yourself, and where like the song, like the part of the song that really stuck out to me, of course, is the second verse where you're talking about your conversation with Fonte and about potentially retiring, like you mentioned quite a bit earlier on this joint. And like, you know, like, of course, I'm sure this was either like during or after the vocal surgery. And
I think it was before. I think it was right before, yeah.
And like, you know, that's a really powerful conversation for you to have, like being at this point where you think you want to hang the mic up, and then having someone like Tay come through and be like, no, what the fuck? Like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was awesome, man. Shout to Tay. He's family, and he's obviously amazing, and everybody knows, you know, what he's about and what he's built, man. And it's unparalleled. Just the LB as a whole, you know, the whole thing, LB as a whole, of course. pool, all that.
Yeah.
So yes, I guess God walked in the room, man, because something just said, call Tay. You know what I mean? And I don't speak to Tay every day. Like, we super cool, but I don't speak to him every day. You know what I mean? It's not somebody who, yo, you crashed the game last night? Yo, you saw so-and-so do that? Like, you know, we don't do that, you know? So I guess God walked in the room. Something said, yo, call Fonte. So I texted Tay and I was like, yo, you around? He was like, yeah, I'm around. I was like, yo, I'm gonna give you a shout. Like, yeah, I called him and we was on the phone for like 3 hours, man. Like, maybe longer. Like, I had to go pick up my son from daycare. It was like we was on the phone for like a really long time and we was just chopping it up and just talking life and just different shit and just all types of stuff, music and outside of music and everything. And then I mentioned that and he was like, you bugging. He was like, what you doing? You know, like, what you doing? It was almost like a big brother because he's a little older. He was like, what you doing? You know what I mean? Like, nah, like, what you talking about? And everything I said, you know, on the record was part of the conversation. He was just like, nah, man, don't let these motherfuckers tell you when to stop, bro. Like, you stop when you ready. Like, you know, don't let these motherfuckers tell you when to stop. And I was like, you right. He was like, look at, you know, look at all the shit you've done. Look at everybody running around making music. Look at all the shit you've done. Like, that all this stuff is inspired by the shit you do, the shit, you know, obviously what LB does and, you know, so many different people. And he was like, yo, like, look at all the shit, you know, running around now. You know what I mean? Like, you were part of that, you know, like you had a hand in that. It was like, nah, man, don't let nobody tell you when to walk away, bro. Like, you good. Like, you, meaning like, yo, you rolling, man. You know, because I just got to a point where I was just like, I love making music. I love all the shit. I don't really like the business side. I never did, but I'm starting to like it less and less by the day. And is this really worth my time? Is this really worth all that? And he was just like, yeah, man. Like, yeah, don't let all the business shit dictate how you get busy and what you're doing, you know? And that was what that was. And I appreciated that.
Yeah. Because I know he went through some similar stuff himself. So
right. So he's speaking from experience and his bounce back of like, nah, bro, like, you good, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So to kind of like tie up this conversation about the album and to kind of wrap up this general conversation, like, you know, like you've accomplished a lot over the course of the last, like you've been recording for almost 20 years at this point. And, you know, like you've done, you've done so much. And, so at the point that you're at right now with this album about to drop in 2 days, if you were to retire like the second after you drop this album, would you be happy with the legacy that you've left behind?
100%, without a doubt. I still know that there's so much stuff in the music people haven't gotten. I'm super cool with walking away. As far as my legacy, if I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm really, really good, you know, I'm out, like, I'm being really good, meaning like I'm cool, like I'm a step away, 100%. You know, I'm not there anymore. I was at a point, like I said before I spoke to Tay.
Right.
I'm not there anymore. I think I still got some run left in me, you know, of like just being creative and doing dope shit and telling stories through the music. But if I did, I'm super cool with this being the last one because it really, really is a splendid piece. And I'm super excited about it, man. And the things that, you know, the people that have heard it, the way they've been talking about it, man, like obviously not a lot of people heard it, but the people I've let hear it, whether it's media people and, you know, friends or whatever, you know, I don't have yes men friends. I don't have yes men people in my circle at all. You know, I refuse. You don't get better that way. You get worse and dumber. The people who have heard it, media, people that are strangers, whatever, I'm like, yo, this is it. Like, you got the joint of the year. I don't know who else is dropping this year, but you got it. Like, this is an amazing record, man. And I'm just like, thank you, man. Like, they've been using the word beautiful a lot, which I like. It's like, yo, this is a beautiful record, man. This is a beautiful piece of work. And I'm like, thank you, man. That's what I wanted. You know, that's what I was shooting for. I just wanted to tell a story, you know, and like every record, you know, I wanted a record that was the blackest album I could make, meaning talking about everything from the pitfalls and the plight, the highs and lows, that, you know, everything. And then same thing with this. I wanted a record that really captured gentrification and cultural appropriation, what they mean, how we got here, and how do we potentially get from here. And if I take on a job, I got to make sure I do it right. So when I wanted to make the blackest album ever, I had to make sure that, or else I was going to get called out. So if I'm going to make a record about gentrification and cultural appropriation and really breaking this thing down, if I don't do it right and I half step on the cane, it ain't gonna be right, and I'm gonna get called out. And you can't half step on the cane. You gotta step all the way on that cane, baby. Like you can't half step, you know.
You gotta put your whole ankle in it, or else you might as well have
Absolutely.
not done it at all, right?
Absolutely.
Totally. So my very last question for you before we officially dead this is what's the last movie or TV show that you watched that you enjoyed?
Oh man, Snowfall for sure, without a doubt. I'm snowfalled out. Oh my gosh, I'm snowfalled out. Yeah, I love it. I am like, I got a needle in my arm, man. Like, Snowfall, movie wise, I need to watch Monster. I didn't watch Monster yet. I need to, because I grew up a big Walter Dean Myers fan. Novelist. Like he wrote like a lot of preteen and teen books. So if you were like 11, 12, 13, he wrote books. Still, you know, like his legacy is just books that young Black adults could relate to. So they had a little bit of street stuff, but not too much where your mom is going to be like, why are you reading that? And, you know, like he walked the line very, very well for a preteen kid who looks like us living in the neighborhood, whether it was Brooklyn or Chicago or Jersey or LA, whatever. Like he walks that line incredibly well with his work. And obviously Monster is one of his pieces. I need to see Monster for sure. Yeah, but Snowfall without a fucking doubt, man.
See, everyone's been talking about it. I started it and I'm gonna finish it. I'm like at the point where I'm hooked too, but I'm like way back in season 1.
Yeah, and I don't know how. Season 1, woo, you got some shit coming, boy. Man.
I'm
I don't
so
know
ready.
how you stopped, because what happened was, you know, everybody knows me and my taste when it comes to art and all that, and you know, I speak about things that happen outside and, you know, all that type of stuff. So I'm a huge Wire fan for that reason, and the art
of course,
how amazing it is, the greatest thing ever to me.
One of the greatest shows ever, like for sure.
Yeah, to me, it's the greatest, and you know, so all that stuff, and that's cool. So when Snowfall dropped, everybody was like, "Yo, Sky, you gonna love Snowfall, bro. You gonna love Snowfall. That shit is right up your alley." They talking about coke and this and that and da da da, and you know, the government behind it and streets and da da da. And I was like, "Oh yeah." But for whatever reason, I didn't get to tap into it. I didn't get to start. You know, life and whatever for whatever reason, and I just kept saying, "Yeah, I got to do that. I got to start Snowfall. I got to start Snowfall." And it was earlier this year. I'm new to the fan club, man. It was earlier this year. I said, you know what? Let me buckle down and start Snowfall. And when I started episode 1, I think I went through 5 right away. Like I just couldn't stop. And then the next night, my son goes to bed. Cool, 5 more.
Throw it on.
Next night, my son go to bed. 5 more. You know what I mean? And then my parents took my son for the weekend one weekend, like, oh yeah, give you guys a break. Took my son for the weekend, and I wrapped the whole shit up that weekend. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, yo, what are you doing? Like, my parents were like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? Like, did you go out and enjoy the free time without Miles? And I was like, yeah, I enjoyed the free time, but I didn't go out. Like, what was you? Oh, I was up till like 8 a.m. watching Snowfall. And they were like, what? Like, yeah, I was up till 8 a.m. watching Snowfall. I was Hulu'd out, and man, that thing there, boy.
Yeah, and yeah, like it's John Singleton again to kind of bring that whole thing full circle. Like he spearheaded the whole thing, and he was the executive producer, and I think he created the show, if I remember correctly. So that was me watching Breaking Bad. I ran through the second half of this 4th season of Breaking Bad in a day, from 12 o'clock in the afternoon till 9 o'clock at night. I never felt more drained from anything in my life. It was an awful decision, but it was like just because that show is so intense, and that's kind of like that intensity is what drew me to like on top of the characters and the storytelling. Like Snowfall is real intense, and I just like
it's your family, man. Like I feel like I know everything going on, and you know, being a product of the '80s and all that stuff, being a very young child when that stuff was happening. But obviously, I saw it, and it was around me, and you know, we all got family who've been through it. I lost family members due to that and all that stuff, but it's so good. You're rooting for the bad guys, you know, like Franklin is a bad guy at the end of the day. Like what he's doing now, granted, the CIA is the real bad guys who put all this stuff in position. But in any other story, if you just read this on a piece of paper, Franklin's the villain. You know, he flipped his neighborhood apart, and he flipped the country apart. You know, like I'm not going to tell you, you know, what happens, but you know, he flipped this world upside down. You know, Franklin's a villain in any other world, but great storytelling and great writing and great acting is able to twist you in certain ways where you're rooting for him. I'm like pissed if Franklin gets caught up in something, like, yo, what the fuck? Come on, just let my man out of that. You know what I mean? Like, When, you can't let him out of that. He did X, Y, Z. And it's like, nah, but I'm saying, man, you know what I mean? That's when it's great writing and great acting and great storytelling, when you can get emotionally invested in it. And he feel like my cousin, man. I always said, if I was telling, my battery about to die on my laptop too, but I was telling Kweli on his podcast the other day, I was like, if I meet Damson Idris in person, I don't want him sounding like he's from Peckham, London. When I meet Son, I need him to sound like Franklin. Yeah. And I'm gonna tell her, like, if I meet Son at an event or through some mutual parties, I'm gonna be like, now before you say anything, I need you to throw on the Franklin accent.
He can turn that shit on.
He does.
On command. Like, it's crazy.
I'm gonna be like, fam, I don't want to hear nothing about your London accent. I love London. I want to hear you speak like Franklin, because in my mind, you are my cousin from LA. I need you to speak like Franklin. You know what I mean? Hey, yo, what's up, Lo? Like, I need that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's how emotionally invested I am in that show.
Right. And like, just like really quickly, like, that's like, that context is so important. That's what makes anti-hero stories really appealing, because
that's what makes
you make them sympathetic.
That's when it's great work, because to be able to pull that off, that's when it's great work.
Right. And like, that's like what you've been doing with a lot of these recent projects. Like, you really, like, you bring that context that people don't necessarily think about. So, I thought that was, it was nice to bring that up. Sky, I got no more questions. That was it, man. Yo, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm glad we was able to do this and sit down for a while. Yeah, we right on cue, because my laptop's about to tap out. But yeah, we right on cue, man. I appreciate the time and all that,
Yeah, man, me too. Like, for real. Like, thank you for everything you do, and just like, congrats on the album. Enjoy the rollout and shit. Like, for real,
man. It's much love. Keep listening and keep telling people, and let's get it going, man. You know what I mean?
Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far. And shout out to all the Black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time. 1.